The large silver ship of the Zolosians hung in Earth's orbit like a shining pearl. Inside, Commander Zyrax looked at the blue planet with 6 eyes that could see more colors than any human eye. His tough skin, built to survive in space without protection for short periods, rippled with disappointment. Another carbon planet, he said to his crew. The Council was right to send only a small science team. The Zolosians had visited thousands of worlds across the galaxy. They rated planets by the quality of life that grew there. Worlds with silicon-based life ranked highest. Carbon worlds like Earth ranked lowest. The Galactic Council called them evolutionary dead ends. Who will study the humans? Asked First Officer Krell. Commander Zyrax turned to the youngest member of the science team. Junior xenobiologist Alan will document their biological weaknesses for our report. Alan stood straight, but inside he felt unhappy. Studying humans seemed like a waste of time. His 6 fingers tapped against his leg in a nervous pattern. Yes, Commander, he said. I will begin right away. Earth's governments had agreed to send one person to meet the aliens first. They picked Dr. Susan Wright, a biology professor with special training in communication. A small ship took her up to meet the Zolosian vessel. When Susan stepped through the airlock into the alien ship, she tried not to show surprise at seeing the Zolosians. They stood nearly 7 feet tall with blue-green skin that seemed to shine under the lights. Their 6 eyes blinked at different times in a way that made her feel dizzy. Welcome to the scientific vessel Harmony, said Commander Zyrax. This is Alan, who will study your species. Susan smiled and held out her hand, then remembered the briefing about alien customs and pulled it back. I'm happy to help with your research, she said. Alan looked at Susan through all 6 eyes. His scanner recorded everything about her. His people had evolved past the need for most of the biological systems humans still had. Your species requires sleep? He asked, already knowing the answer from his scans. Yes, about 8 hours per day, Susan said. Alan made a note. Very inefficient. And your vision only sees a small range of light? We see what we call visible light, Susan explained. But we've built tools to detect other wavelengths. Tools to make up for biological failures, Alan said. He noted how humans had no natural armor, weak muscles compared to Zolosians, and poor senses. You suffer from countless diseases because your immune systems are primitive. Susan listened patiently. She had expected the aliens might think this way. Our biology works well enough for our needs, she said. For 3 days, Alan asked questions and made notes about human weaknesses. He felt his report would be simple. Humans were poorly designed by evolution and would likely not survive more than a few thousand more years. On the 4th day, everything changed. Susan and Alan were in a small lab near the engine room when a loud explosion shook the ship. The lights went out, then emergency lights turned on with a red glow. A computer voice spoke in the Zolosian language. What's happening? Susan asked. Power failure in this section, Alan said, his voice tight with worry. The emergency systems say this section is losing air. The doors have sealed automatically. Susan looked around the small lab. Is there a way out? The emergency override is there. Alan pointed to a panel on the wall. But it requires special genetic authorization. Only the commander or first officer can use it. Susan ran to the panel. Anyway, tell me how it works. It's useless, Alan said, and we have only about 4 minutes of air left. Tell me how it works, Susan repeated, her voice firm. Something in her tone made Alan explain. The cover releases with pressure at these 3 points. Inside are control circuits that need specific commands in the right order. Susan pushed at the panel cover. It didn't move. I told you, it needs genetic. Susan grabbed a metal tool from a nearby table and jammed it into the edge of the panel. Using the tool as a lever, she forced the cover open, breaking the seal. That will set off alarms, Alan said. Good, Susan replied. She looked at the complex circuits inside. Which sequence? Alan blinked in surprise. Top right, then bottom. Left, then middle. But without genetic authorization, Susan pulled wires from a nearby computer terminal and touched them to the control circuits in the pattern Alan described. Sparks flew. The door remained shut. Maybe if we... Susan started to say, but then stopped. Wait, your species evolved in a high-oxygen environment, right? Yes, Alan said. How did you know? Your skin color suggests high oxygen transport, Susan said. So this emergency system is designed for your needs. It probably thinks the air is too thin now, but it might be fine for me. She pulled more wires from the computer and connected them to different points on the circuit board. The wires grew hot. The emergency lights flickered. That's dangerous, Alan warned. You're bypassing safety systems. Sometimes you have to, Susan said. Her hands moved quickly despite having only 5 fingers. She twisted 2 wires together and touched them to a final connection. The door slid open. Fresh air rushed in. Alan took a deep breath. Security officers appeared in the hallway, led by First Officer Krell. How did you open the door? Krell demanded. She did it, Alan said, pointing to Susan. Without proper genetic authorization or tools. How? Asked Krell, all 6 eyes focused on Susan. Susan shrugged. I just had to think differently about the problem. Later, when they were alone, Alan asked Susan the same question. Our systems are designed to prevent unauthorized access. How did you really do it? Susan smiled. Sometimes what looks like a flaw is actually an advantage. What do you mean? Alan asked. Your species evolved perfect solutions for specific problems, Susan explained. But when something unexpected happens, you can only respond in predetermined ways. Humans evolved as generalists. We're not perfect at anything, but we can adapt to almost everything. Alan considered this idea. It went against everything the Galactic Council taught about evolution. I would like to study this further, he said finally. Would you show me more about how humans adapt? Susan's smile grew wider. I'd be happy to. Would you like to visit Earth? Alan felt excitement for the first time since arriving at this supposedly unimportant planet. Yes, he said. I believe I would. On the main deck, Commander Zyrax received Alan's request to conduct research on Earth's surface. He approved it, quickly, thinking it would simply provide more evidence of human inferiority. He had no idea that this decision would eventually change how the entire galaxy understood evolution. After the incident on the ship, Alan couldn't stop thinking about what Susan had done. He sent a message to Commander Zyrax requesting more time to study humans. The commander agreed, thinking Alan would find more proof of human weakness. 3. Days later, Alan stepped out of a small shuttle onto Earth's surface. The gravity felt slightly stronger than on his homeworld. The air smelled different, full of plants and water and 1,000 things he couldn't name. Susan stood waiting for him. Welcome to Earth, she said. Alan looked around at the research station. It sat on a green hill overlooking a valley with a river running through it. Mountains rose in the distance. I will continue documenting human biological weaknesses, Alan said. But I am also interested in this adaptability you mentioned. Susan smiled. I've arranged for you to meet my research team. They can show you different aspects of human life. Inside the main building, 2 humans waited. A tall man with light brown skin stood up first. This is Jack Peterson, Susan said. He's an engineer who designs buildings that can survive earthquakes. Jack held out his hand. Alan had studied this greeting custom and carefully shook Jack's hand with 3 of his 6 fingers. And this is Nancy Bell, Susan continued. She's a doctor who studies how the human body responds to extreme conditions. Nancy nodded at Alan. Susan told us you're interested in human biology. We've planned a small expedition so you can see humans in different environments. Alan took out his recording device. Your species requires constant hydration, correct? And you can only survive in a narrow temperature range? That's true, Nancy said. But we've found ways to live in almost every environment on Earth, from deserts to Arctic regions. Through technology, Alan said. Not biology. Sometimes, Jack agreed. but sometimes it's just our bodies adapting. The next morning, they set out for a hiking trip in the nearby mountains. Alan continued making notes as they walked. He recorded how inefficient the human digestive system was compared to Zalosian systems. He noted how humans sweated to cool down, a wasteful use of water. He documented their fragile skeletons that could break under relatively minor stress. By midday, they had climbed high enough to see for miles in every direction. They stopped for what humans called lunch. Your bodies require fuel every few hours, Alan observed, watching them eat. Very inefficient. Jack laughed. Maybe. But have you noticed we've been climbing for 5 hours and none of us has stopped functioning? Alan made another note. It was true. Despite their inefficient systems, the humans showed remarkable endurance. As they prepared to continue their hike, Nancy looked up at the sky with concern. Weather's changing, she said. Those clouds weren't in the forecast. Alan checked his own weather scanner. My instruments show no danger. Susan looked at the dark clouds moving quickly toward them. We should head back down anyway. They had only gone a short distance when the rain began. It fell hard and fast, making the trail slippery. Then Alan heard a strange rumbling sound. What is? He began to ask. Rock slide, Jack shouted, pointing. Up the mountain, Alan saw large rocks and mud sliding down toward them. His body did what Zalosians had evolved to do in danger. He froze in place, his skin hardening into protective armor, his breathing slowing to preserve oxygen. The humans did something completely different. They moved in what seemed like chaos. Jack ran to the right, away from the main slide path. Nancy grabbed Alan's arm, trying to pull him. Susan shouted instructions that made no sense to Alan. We have to split up, Jack, that tree. Nancy, get him behind the boulder. Nancy pulled harder on Alan's arm, but he remained frozen in his defensive posture. With surprising strength, she dragged him several feet before the rock slide hit. A wave of mud and small rocks washed over them. Alan's protective skin kept him safe, but he couldn't move until the danger response wore off. Another 2 minutes at least. Through the mud, he saw Nancy get hit by a rock. She made a pain sound but kept moving, pulling herself and Alan behind. A large boulder. On the other side of the slide path, Jack had climbed partway up a tree. Susan had found shelter behind a rock outcropping. The rock slide continued for nearly a minute before stopping. When it was over, Alan's defensive response finally relaxed. He found Nancy sitting beside him, holding her arm. You're damaged, he said, noticing the odd angle of her arm. Broken, she agreed. But it could have been worse. She reached into her pack with her good arm and pulled out a small kit. With remarkable skill using just one hand, she made a splint for her broken arm. Jack and Susan carefully made their way across the muddy slope to join them. Everyone okay? Susan asked. Nancy has broken her support limb, Alan said. I'll be fine, Nancy replied. But we need to get back to the station. As they walked down the mountain, Alan kept looking at Nancy. She moved slower but continued, despite her injury. Jack stayed close to her, sometimes helping her over difficult spots. Susan led the way, finding the safest path. I don't understand, Alan finally said. When danger came, you all did different things. There was no standard response. We reacted to the specific situation, Susan explained. One response wouldn't work for every danger. And Nancy continues to function with a broken limb, Alan noted. Zalosians would enter a healing trance and be immobile for days. I have to keep moving, Nancy said simply. We need to get down the mountain. That evening, after the humans had treated Nancy's injury properly, Alan sat with Susan in the research station. Your species shouldn't have survived, Alan said. According to all established evolutionary models, you should have been replaced by more specialized species. Maybe your models are what's flawed, Susan suggested. Alan thought about what he had seen. The rock slide had revealed something important. The Zalosian response, perfected over millions of years, had one advantage: personal protection. But it had many disadvantages. It was slow to adapt if the situation changed. It left him completely vulnerable after the immediate danger passed. Tolyi, Human response looked chaotic but achieved better results. They communicated during the crisis. They made decisions in seconds. They adapted to changing circumstances. And most surprisingly, they helped each other even at risk to themselves. "I need to reconsider my research approach," Alan said finally. "I've been documenting weaknesses, but I haven't been seeing the full picture." Susan smiled. "Sometimes what looks like a weakness is actually the source of our greatest strength." Alan nodded slowly. What if the Council had been wrong all along? What if the very things that made humans seem flawed actually made them more likely to survive in an unpredictable universe? He needed to learn more. 2 weeks after the rock slide incident, Alan sat in Susan's office sending his latest report to the Zalosian ship. His findings had changed. Instead of listing human weaknesses, he now documented how these apparent flaws created unexpected strengths. "Human sleep requirements," he wrote, "enable neural pattern reorganization that appears to enhance problem-solving abilities. Their emotional responses, while seemingly chaotic, drive complex social cooperation under stress." When he finished, he sent the report to Commander Zyrax. The response came faster than Alan expected. "Your report has been forwarded to the Galactic Council," Commander Zyrax's message said. "Senior Evaluator Vex will arrive tomorrow to assess your findings." Alan felt his skin change color with worry. Senior evaluators rarely left the Council. Homeworld. Something about his reports had caused serious concern. "Is everything okay?" Susan asked, noticing Alan's color shift. "The Council is sending Senior Evaluator Vex to Earth," Alan said. "This is unusual. Evaluators only come when the Council sees a potential threat." Susan frowned. "A threat? We've been completely cooperative." "It's not about cooperation," Alan explained. "The Council believes in a specific evolutionary path. Species that follow this path eventually join the Council. Species that don't are considered unpredictable. And my unpredictable species just showed some surprising abilities," Susan said. Alan nodded. "The Council may see humans as a potential disruption to galactic order." The next day, a large Zalosian ship entered Earth's orbit. It was 3 times the size of Commander Zyrax's science vessel. A shuttle brought Senior Evaluator Vex to the research station. Vex was taller than most Zalosians, with skin that had a purple tint. His 6 eyes moved independently, taking in everything at once. "Junior Xenobiologist Alan," Vex said. "Your reports contain disturbing claims." Alan stood straight. "My reports are accurate, Senior Evaluator." Vex turned to look at Susan and the other humans who had gathered to meet him. "These humans appear primitive, yet you suggest they possess adaptability that challenges Council evolutionary models." "I have observed it directly," Alan said. Vex made a gesture that Zalosians use to show disbelief. "Observations can be misinterpreted. I will conduct my own tests." Over the next 3 days, Vex created a series of challenges for the humans. He chose Susan and 2 other members of her team, George Richards, a physicist, and Laura Martinez, a climate scientist. The first test focused on environmental adaptation. Vex took the humans to different climate zones, from a desert to a cold mountaintop. In each location, he measured how quickly they adapted to temperature changes. Inefficient biological responses, Vex noted as he watched the humans sweat in the desert and shiver in the cold. But they continue functioning. The second set of tests involved problem solving. Vex presented complex puzzles that required spatial reasoning, mathematical skills, and pattern recognition. George struggled with a spatial puzzle that Zalosian children could solve easily. But after failing twice, he suddenly approached it from a completely different angle. His solution was unlike any Vex had seen before. "That's not the standard method," Vex said. George shrugged. "I couldn't see how to do it the normal way, so I tried something else." Laura showed similar adaptability during an environmental challenge. When asked to create a tool that could measure wind patterns using only the materials provided, she combined them in ways Vex hadn't considered possible. "They shouldn't be able to do this," Vex said privately to Alan after the 3rd day of testing. "Their neural networks aren't complex enough." "I believe they're complex in different ways," Alan replied. Their apparent flaws force them to develop solutions we would never consider. On the final day, Vex designed a test he was certain would prove human inferiority once and for all. He created a scenario where the humans needed to work together to solve a problem, but gave them conflicting information. In Zalosian society, this would cause a breakdown in cooperation since their species relied on perfect information sharing. Susan, George, and Laura quickly realized they had different instructions. Instead of arguing about who was right, they shared what they knew, identified the conflicts, and developed a plan that incorporated all their perspectives. They completed the task in half the expected time. Vex watched with all 6 eyes wide open. "This is not possible," he said. "When information conflicts, cooperation should fail." "Not for humans," Susan explained. "We almost never have perfect information. We're used to working with uncertainty." That evening, Vex called a meeting with Alan and the human team. His normal purple skin tone had paled to lavender. "My evaluation is complete," he announced. "I must report to the council that junior xenobiologist Alan's findings appear correct. Human biology demonstrates adaptation strategies that our models did not predict." "Is that good or bad news?" Laura asked. Vex's eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought. "It is concerning news. The council believes evolutionary success follows a specific path: specialization, optimization, stabilization. Your species follows none of these patterns. You are inefficient, unspecialized, and constantly changing. Yet we've survived and thrived," George pointed out. "Yes," Vex agreed, "and that is what concerns the council. If your model of adaptation is viable, it suggests our understanding of evolution itself may be incomplete." After the meeting, Susan found Alan looking at the night sky from the research station's roof. "What happens now?" she asked. "The council will debate what your species represents," Alan said. "Some will see humans as a curiosity. Others will see you as a potential threat to galactic stability." "Because we're different?" Alan nodded. "The council believes predictability creates peace. Your unpredictable adaptability frightens them." Susan looked up at the stars. "There are trillions of stars out there, countless planets. How could the council ever believe there's only one right way to evolve?" "Because it has worked for them for millions of years," Alan explained. "Until now, they haven't found a species that succeeded by breaking their rules." "Well," Susan said with a small smile, "humans have always been good at breaking rules." Alan felt something strange, a desire to laugh, an emotional response he had rarely experienced. Being around humans was changing him too. "The council's debate will take time," he said. "Meanwhile, I would like to continue my research." "Of course," Susan agreed. "What specifically would you like to study next?" Alan thought about what he had seen over the past weeks. "I want to understand how your emotional responses affect your problem solving. Emotions seem inefficient, yet they appear to drive your most creative solutions." Susan smiled. "That might be the most important question you've asked yet." Neither of them knew just how important that question would become in the days ahead, as a new crisis was already developing on the Zalosian ship in orbit, one that would test the limits of human adaptability and change the galaxy forever. 3 days after Senior Evaluator Vex completed his tests, a message came from Commander Zyrax's ship. The computer voice sounded flat, but Alan could tell something was wrong from the choice of words. "Request immediate medical consultation. Unknown condition affecting crew. Multiple symptoms. Standard treatments ineffective." Alan, Susan, and Vex gathered in the communication room at the research station. Commander Zyrax appeared on the screen. His normally blue-green skin had pale, yellow patches. "Something is spreading through the ship," Zyrax said, his voice weaker than normal. "It began after we studied some Earth soil samples. 30 crew members are now sick." "What are the symptoms?" Vex asked. "Skin discoloration. Organ function. Decrease. Neural disruption." Zyrax struggled to speak clearly. "Our medical systems cannot identify the pathogen." Susan leaned toward the screen. "Commander, did your medical team check if the pathogen might be something from Earth that your species has never encountered before?" "Yes," Zyrak said. It appears to be a dormant organism from your soil that activated when exposed to our ship's atmosphere. Vex's skin darkened with concern. This is extremely serious. The Council maintains standardized biology across all member species. A pathogen that affects one of us could affect all of us. What do you mean, standardized biology? Susan asked. To join the Council, species undergo genetic optimization, Vex explained. It makes our biology more efficient but also more uniform. A weakness in one becomes a weakness in all. Susan turned to Alan. How many Zolosians are on the ship? 200, Alan replied. Susan thought for a moment. Commander, I'd like to bring a human medical team to your ship. We might see something your systems miss. Zyrax looked at Vex, who hesitated before nodding. Approved, Zyrax said. But hurry. 6 hours later, Susan led a team onto the Zolosian ship. With her were Dr. Olivia Harris, a specialist in infectious diseases, and Dr. Daniel White, a geneticist. All three wore protective suits, though no one knew if they would work against an alien pathogen. The ship's medical bay was filled with 6 Zolosians. Their normally active bodies lay still on beds, their skin showing the same yellow patches as Commander Zyrax. All of them have exactly the same symptoms, Olivia noted as she examined several patients. It's progressing at exactly the same rate in each individual. That fits with what Vex said about standardized biology, Susan said. They're genetically very similar. Daniel was using a portable device to analyze samples from the sick Zolosians. This is fascinating, he said. The pathogen seems to target specific genetic sequences, the very ones that are identical across all Zolosians. Can we create a treatment? Susan asked. Daniel looked up from his device. Maybe, but we need to understand how it works first. For the next 20 hours, the human team worked without stopping. They took short breaks to eat and used stimulants to stay awake. Olivia set up a temporary lab on the Zolosian ship. Daniel communicated with other scientists on Earth. Susan coordinated their efforts and kept Vex informed of their progress. Your team should rest, Vex told Susan after she had been working for nearly a day straight. Zolosians can work continuously for 5 days before needing recovery time. We can't work that long, Susan admitted. But we take turns resting, and sometimes being forced to step away from a problem helps us see new solutions when we return. By the second day, Daniel had identified how the pathogen worked. It's attacking the optimized genetic sequences in Zolosian cells, he explained to Vex. The very adaptations that make your biology efficient are what make you vulnerable. Can you stop it? Vex asked. We're working on several approaches, Olivia said. She had dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, but she kept working. The third day, trouble came. Olivia collapsed while working in the lab. Daniel rushed to her side. Her temperature is elevated, he said after scanning her. Heart rate increased. She's infected. The pathogen jumped to humans? Vex asked, his voice showing real fear for the first time. It must have adapted, Susan said. Evolved to target our biology, too. Vex's skin turned almost white. You should leave immediately, return to Earth, quarantine your team. But Daniel was already back at work, moving faster than before. No, he said firmly. This actually helps us. Now we can compare how it affects both species. Your colleague is sick, Vex said. You're at risk. The logical response is to retreat. Daniel looked up from his work. The logical response is to work faster. Susan helped move Olivia to a bed. She gave her medicine to reduce the fever, then returned to help Daniel. Her infection gives us new information, Daniel explained as he analyzed Olivia's blood samples. The pathogen adapted to human biology, but not perfectly. It's struggling against our immune system's variability. Daniel worked through the night, without stopping. Susan forced him to eat and drink while he worked. By morning, his hands were shaking from exhaustion, but his eyes were bright with excitement. I think I've got it, he said. The pathogen can't handle biological variation. It evolved to attack the uniform aspects of Zolosian biology. When it jumped to humans, it tried to do the same thing, But our biology is too diverse. How does that help the Zolosians? Susan asked. I can create a treatment using the redundant aspects of human biology, the very parts the Zolosians evolved beyond, Daniel explained. Our junk DNA and backup immune pathways contain elements that can disrupt the pathogen. He turned to Vex. Your species removed biological inefficiencies through your genetic optimization, but those inefficient systems are exactly what we need now. Within hours, Daniel had created a treatment. He tested it first on samples from the 6 Zolosians, then on Olivia. It worked. The pathogen couldn't adapt to the introduced human genetic material. As the treatment was given to the Zolosians, they began to recover. Commander Zyrax was one of the first to regain consciousness. You saved my crew, he said to Susan and Daniel, using your inefficient biology. Not inefficient, Daniel corrected gently. Just different. Later, as Olivia recovered and the last of the Zolosians received treatment, Alan found Susan looking out a viewport at Earth below. Your inefficient immune responses, they're actually saving you, Alan said. And us too. You haven't optimized away your biological redundancies. Susan nodded. Evolution kept our options open. Alan's 6 eyes all focused on Susan's face. The Council believed that the path to advancement was through specialization and optimization, but your species shows there's another way. Maintaining adaptability even when it seems inefficient. Sometimes what looks like a flaw is actually a strength, Susan said. Alan nodded. I must report this to the Council immediately. This changes everything we thought we knew about evolutionary success. As Alan left to make his report, he realized his view of humans had completely transformed. What he once saw as primitive and flawed, he now recognized as brilliantly adaptive. The Council would need to reconsider everything: their understanding of evolution, their criteria for advanced species, even their own biological choices. The crisis had revealed a truth that would reshape galactic civilization. Perfection might be less valuable than the ability to change. 1 month after the pathogen crisis, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. For the first time in over 500 years, they invited a non-member species to speak. Susan Wright prepared to address the most powerful gathering in the known galaxy. Alan stood beside her in the preparation room. The council chamber waited on the other side of a large silver door. Susan wore formal Earth clothes, a simple blue suit that looked very plain next to the elaborate Zolosian outfits. Are you nervous? Alan asked. Susan nodded. A little. It's not every day you tell an ancient galactic government that their fundamental understanding of evolution is wrong. You'll do well, Alan assured her. Just speak the truth as you see it. Senior Evaluator Vex entered the room. His skin had returned to its normal purple color after recovering from the pathogen. The council is ready, he said. Remember, many members will resist your ideas. Change does not come easily to species that have followed the same path for millions of years. Susan took a deep breath. I understand. The silver doors opened. Susan walked into a vast circular chamber. Hundreds of aliens from different council species sat in rising tiers. Most looked similar to Zolosians, with minor variations, the result of their standardized biology. In the center of the chamber stood a small platform. Susan stepped onto it and looked up at the council leader, a tall Zolosian with silver skin. Human Susan Wright, the leader said. You may address the council. Susan took another deep breath. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I come as a representative of Earth, a planet the council classified as an evolutionary dead end. I'm here to suggest that classification may need to be reconsidered. She activated a small device that projected images above the platform. The first showed human DNA. My species has been called flawed. We require sleep. We have limited senses. Our bodies break easily. We die after a mere 100 years. By council standards, these are failures of evolution. The council members watched silently. Some made notes. Others simply stared with multiple eyes. But these apparent flaws provide unexpected advantages, Susan continued. Our need for sleep enables our brains to process information in new ways, leading to creativity and problem-solving. Our short lives create urgency that drives innovation. Our emotional variability enables complex social cooperation. She showed more images. Humans living in different environments around Earth working together to build cities, exploring space in simple ships. Most importantly, what you call biological inefficiency, we call diversity. No two humans are exactly alike. Our genetic differences make us less efficient as individuals but more resilient as a species. Susan paused, looking directly at the council leader. When the pathogen threatened the Zalosian crew, it affected them all the same way because their biology had been standardized. Their perfect systems had the same perfect vulnerabilities. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some council members shifted uncomfortably. Humans could help create a treatment because our inefficient, redundant biology contained elements the pathogen couldn't predict. Our flaws became our strength. The council leader raised a hand for silence. You suggest the council's evolutionary path is flawed? Susan chose her words carefully. I suggest there is more than one valid evolutionary path. Specialization and optimization work well in stable environments, but in unpredictable environments, adaptability may matter more than efficiency. The chamber erupted in voices. Some council members seemed angry, others curious. The leader raised both hands and silence returned. This challenges our most basic beliefs, the leader said. For millions of years we have followed the path of optimization. We have removed biological redundancies. We have standardized our genetics. We have extended our lives. You suggest this was a mistake? Not a mistake, Susan replied. A choice that had both benefits and costs. You gained efficiency but lost adaptability. Both paths are valid, but a galaxy with only one evolutionary approach is more vulnerable than a galaxy with many. The debate continued for hours. Some council members rejected Susan's ideas completely. Others saw wisdom in them. A small group suggested that perhaps both approaches could be combined, optimization where appropriate, diversity where needed. Finally, the council leader called for a vote. The chamber grew quiet as members registered their positions. When the results appeared, Susan felt relief wash over her. By a narrow margin, the council had voted to reclassify Earth and establish formal relations with humanity. This is only the beginning of a long discussion, the leader told Susan. But it is a beginning. Later, at a small gathering to celebrate the council's decision, Commander Zyrax approached Susan and Alan. Your report has been officially retitled, he told Alan with what Susan now recognized as his Zalosian humor. It is no longer the shocking flaws of human biology. It is now Alternative Evolutionary Strategies, the human model. Alan's skin changed color with pleasure. A much better title, Susan smiled. What happens next? The council has approved the first joint research initiative between humans and council species, Zyrax said. You and Alan will lead it. The goal is to explore how apparent biological flaws might represent untapped potential across all species. That's wonderful news, Susan said. When do we start? Immediately, Zyrax replied. The council moves quickly, once a decision is made. As the celebration continued around them, Alan and Susan stepped away to look out a large window at the stars. I came to document your flaws, Alan said quietly. Instead, you've helped me see the flaws in how we define perfection. Susan smiled. That's the most human thing you could have said. Alan thought about this for a moment. Perhaps that's a compliment now. It always was, Susan replied. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Each point of light might hold life following its own evolutionary path. Some might optimize. Some might diversify. Some might find new paths neither humans nor Zalosians had imagined. The galaxy suddenly seemed larger, filled with more possibilities than either of them had considered before. The council had taken its first step toward embracing a new understanding of life, one that valued difference as much as perfection. For humans, it meant acceptance in the galactic community. For council species, it offered new ways to think about their own biology and future. What had begun as a simple scientific study had become the foundation for a profound change in galactic civilization, and it had all started because someone took the time to look beyond apparent flaws and see unexpected strengths. As Susan and Alan turned back to join the celebration, they knew their work was just beginning. There would be resistance, setbacks, and challenges ahead. But they also knew something important. When different perspectives come together, impossible problems find unexpected solutions. What looks like a flaw from one angle might be the key to survival from another. In that simple truth lay the hope for a new and better future for all species across the stars.